This episode of Lost in Adaptation is sponsored by Raycon. As my beautiful watchers are no doubt aware, I am obsessed with listening to audiobooks when I am out and about doing menial tasks or at the gym. And what does one need to enjoy a good audiobook in situations like these? One needs a damn good but affordable set of earphones, that's what. Raycon earphones provide top quality sound but start at half the price of other premium wireless earbuds on the market. Their latest model, E25, is their best yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design. They're pretty much guaranteed to sit comfortably and fashionably in any ear, as they come with a variety of size and color options. This is the bit that I personally think is really cool. The compact carry case they come in is a portable power pack capable of charging the earphones 4 times before you have to plug it in. That is some nerdy earphone technology, and I am here for it. Now, in the unlikely event that you completely run out of audiobooks, or weirder still, you willingly choose to stop listening to them, I'm given to understand these earphones are also ideal for listening to music. At least that is the heartfelt opinion of a Mr. Snoop Dogg, who I mostly know as one of the actors from the Starsky and Hutch reboot, but I am assured is something of an expert in the field of music, so his opinion can probably be trusted. So yeah, pretty solid product all in all, and you can get 15% off your order by clicking the link in the video description. Hello my beautiful watchers, and welcome back to Lost in Adaptation, the YouTube-based review show that compares adaptations of books to said books to see if they did them justice. David John Moore Cornwell is a British Army intelligence officer turned MI5 agent turned MI6 agent turned novelist who published under the pen name John le Carré because apparently when you work for every spy agency in Britain during the Cold War, you're not allowed to use your real name for stuff. Not surprisingly, considering his resume, the dude wrote espionage thrillers. No one could deny his expertise in these matters. After the success of his first novel, le Carré quit MI6 to become a full-time author and went on to write 8 more books featuring the same hero, George Smiley, and 16 novels with different leads that are relatively standalone but still share the continuity of a shared universe with recurring characters occasionally making cameos. Standout novels from both categories include A Perfect Spy, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. They don't all have the word spy in the title. He is a little more subtle than that. There have apparently been 16 attempts to adapt various works of John le Carré over the years, with differing levels of success, but today we are just going to talk about the most recent. The Night Manager was le Carré's 14th full-length novel and one of these standalone works. Published in 1993, it was the first of le Carré's books to be written and set after the Cold War ended. Up until this point, that conflict had understandably been the main focus of his tales of high-stakes espionage. It tells of the trials and tribulations of a former British serviceman turned hotel manager by the name of Jonathan Pine, who gets caught up in a deadly struggle between British and American intelligence agencies and a powerful international arms dealer they're trying to take down. I found the book to be mostly worthwhile, but with a few notable features I didn't care for. The POV characters are borderline unlikable, which is always a bit of a problem for me. It's not nearly as bad as Ian Fleming's James Bond, and let's face it, we all knew that comparison was coming sooner or later, but it's still noticeable. The storyline is also non-sequential in places, and while there's nothing wrong with that in principle, I felt that in this case maybe le Carré was asking me to accept just a little bit too much confusion early on the vague promise that it will make sense later. The ending was also, well, not miserable, but also not happy. I think my biggest issue with it was it just wasn't really much of anything. I didn't feel things were concluded, they just seemed to sort of stop, and there wasn't much wrap-up. These are the minority negatives though. On the whole, I still found the plot engaging, the tension well handled, and the book generally well written. One thing in particular that amused me no end was the colossal amount of obscure British slang words in it. I didn't realise it till now, but I guess most British authors tone down that sort of thing to appeal to a wider audience, but le Carré appears to have given zero fucks if he confuses his international readers. If you're into spy thrillers, I would recommend this book. It's a fun example of one, and if you enjoy it, you'll have all of le Carré's many other works to dig into afterwards. In 2016, a 6-episode TV series adaptation of The Night Manager was aired on the BBC. It was directed by Susanne Bier, a Danish filmmaker and the first woman to win a Golden Globe, an Emmy, and the European Film Award. The show starred Tom Hiddleston as Pine, Hugh Laurie using his real accent for once as Roper, the charismatic but deadly arms dealer, Elizabeth Elizabeth Debicki as Jed, Roper's significant other and Pine's love interest, and Olivia Colman as Burr, Pine's British intelligence recruiter and handler. While this isn't universally true, in my experience, British TV shows often lack the production value that our American cousins are used to seeing. This is not the case with The Night Manager. These mother lovers went all out on this bad boy in pretty much every way. A-list actors, a massive cast of supporting roles and extras, worldwide on-location filming, and top-level special effects. At an estimated £3 million an episode, it's believed to have been the BBC's most well-funded show ever, and they put every penny to good use, it seems. The show was ridiculously well received in Britain and parts of Europe, cleaning up at various TV awards. For whatever reason, though, it didn't gain much of a foothold in the US, which I think is America's loss. Spoiler warning for later in the episode, but I think I actually ended up liking it more than the book. It's available on Amazon Prime if anyone's interested. I'm not prepared to say that it alone is worth subscribing for if you don't have it already. There's only one show I'd give that honor to, but if you already pay for Prime, it's definitely worth watching. Because I have 6 hours worth of show to work with this time, I fear I can't be my usual hyper-anal self about every detail that was changed from the book, and must settle for a more overview comparison. Anyway, let's talk adaptation. Interestingly, this series is what I would describe as very loyal to the book, with only minor changes made, mostly to update it for the 20+ years since the book was published, for almost exactly 4.5 episodes, and then it flies off the rails completely for the last 1.5 installments, and concludes with a very different ending to the novel. Obviously we'll come to that great parting of the ways in just a moment. First though, the unchanged bits. War veteran turned night manager Jonathan Pine is working in a hotel in Cairo, Egypt, and is approached by one of the long-stay guests, a woman by the name of Sophie, who is a well-known mistress of Freddie Hamid, a member of a local crime family. She asks him to personally photocopy some documents for her in a way that basically guarantees he'll see what's on them. Pine notices that they're evidence of illegal arms sales. Freddie is in business with a famous British entrepreneur by the name of Richard Roper, who is apparently secretly a bit of a naughty boy. Sophie tells him to keep these copies in the hotel safe and requests that they only be retrieved and given to the police if anything were to happen to her. Pine, however, feels that he has a moral obligation to betray her trust and hand the documents over to the authorities right away, sending them back to his homeland of Great Britain, where they make their way to a small subsection of British intelligence called Enforcement, headed by an agent by the name of Burr. Burr is keen to follow up on Roper, but faces roadblocks from larger intelligence agencies like MI6 and the bureaucrats running them. The leak of the documents also gets back to the criminals, and they beat the crap out of Sophie for betraying them. Despite this, Sophie not only refuses to tell them that it was really Pine who leaked them, she forgives him for doing it, admitting that it was the right thing to do, and they become lovers. Even though Pine does his best to protect her, she is tracked down by her boyfriend and his colleagues, and they finish beating her to death. Heartbroken and overcome with guilt, Pine leaves Egypt and moves to Switzerland, becoming a night manager at a hotel there. Some years later, in a very unlucky twist of fate, Roper himself comes to stay at the hotel, bringing all Pine's bad memories back. And despite his best efforts not to be, he's also very taken with Roper's girlfriend, Jed. After this unpleasant encounter, Pine is approached by Burr, who talks him into becoming a spy for Enforcement, believing that he has a good chance of getting in on Roper's organization. His mission is codenamed Operation Limpet. In order to make him appealing to Roper, Burr gets him to rob his hotel, then flee back to the UK under a fake name to pretend to lay low for a bit. While hiding out in a small coastal town, a local girl falls for him, but Pine doesn't let that affect his mission. They stage a fake murder, and he pretends to flee abroad, getting a job at a restaurant that they know Roper frequents. There's then a staged kidnapping of Roper's son, which Pine was to intercede in, becoming a hero to Roper, though he gets carried away and badly injures one of the actors. His partner gets revenge by beating him to a pulp, but the mission does succeed, and Roper is impressed with his sacrifice, so takes him to his private land to recover, offering him a job in his operation and a new identity to help him evade the authorities. Major Corcoran, aka Corky, one of Roper's flamboyantly gay underlings, smells a rat and tries to warn Roper, but fortunately part 2 of the plan involves Apistol, a Greek lawyer and another enforcement informant, sowing the seeds of distrust about him and Roper, so he'll force the Major out of the loop and select Pine to be his replacement. During this process, Pine and Jed keep getting closer despite their better judgment. They eventually catch each other spying on Roper and can't resist their feelings anymore. Meanwhile, back home, Burr is having a lot of trouble with the same bureaucracy, power struggles and corruption that halted the case before. A small advantage comes when there's a half-hearted attempt to either kill or intimidate her boss, and he reacts the opposite way than was expected and throws more funding and personnel behind Burr. Pine manages to get a lot of dirt to Burr, but not enough for a completely closed case because Roper is super careful about making making sure his name isn't attached to anything. However, Pine does get Corky's job, much to the Major's dismay. Roper brings him in on a huge arms sale he's planning and talks him through how they plan to move the money around using fake companies, one of which Pine is now the fake owner of. Unfortunately, yet more leaks in British intelligence lead to the outing and murder of Apostol. Pine is taken to the other side of the world to help show off Roper's weapons to potential buyers and sneaks information about the shipment to Burr, circumventing all of Roper's seemingly airtight security with the simple act of writing the info down on a piece of paper and paying some random guy to deliver it. And this is the before-mentioned point where the show diverged from the book almost entirely. The last vestiges of similarity include enforcement getting completely shut down by a combination of corrupt or just incompetent higher-ups, but Burr still managing to help Pine at least a little by bluffing and blackmailing said higher-ups, and Pine's cover getting blown, leaving him at the mercy of Roper. Up until the divergence, many lines from the book are recreated word for word where the time setting allows, and it's very good on the fine details too. It's actually kind of fascinating to see a show stay so loyal for most of its run, then go so far astray all at once, which is a nice segue to... We'll get to that final 25% of the series in just a second. There were a few changes to the main bulk of it that I need to go over first. The main thing I've already mentioned. They updated from 1993 technology to 2016 with all the greater emphasis on high-tech surveillance and data security that implies. They also changed Roper's customers from South American drug cartels to Middle Eastern warlords to keep up with the world's current strife. Funnily enough, the TV show also chose to tell some parts of their story non-sequentially, but different parts than the novel, putting what was once out of order back in order and mixing what had been in order out of it. Olivia Colman's Burr is a man in the book. Apparently, Le Carré wasn't 100% on the idea of gender flipping him for the show at first, but once he had a chance to see what they were doing with the character, he came around and ended up really liking her. He's explained that his intelligence agencies of the book were complete sausage fest because that's just what he was used to when he used to work for them, but it made total sense to diversify the cast in the same way the agencies themselves have diversified over the decades. Amusingly, he also admitted that in hindsight, his story was basically a tale of one white middle-aged man versus another white middle-aged man, using a third slightly younger white middle-aged man as a weapon, so yeah, Mrs. Burr was a welcome addition. Also very amusingly, apparently in his headcanon, her rarely seen on-screen husband is his Burr, but in the show's universe, it just happens that the other half of the marriage was the one to get into the spy game. A change in regards to Pine is he's given a little more agency in the early parts of the story. He's kind of just swept up in the events of the book until he's recruited and trained by Burr. On his own initiative, he investigates Freddie Hamid and steals a bunch of Roper's discarded SIM cards and phone numbers to give to the authorities. I think this helps better explain why Burr was so keen to have him, and him in particular, as her agent in the field. More emphasis is put on the corruption side of the issues that Burr faced with the other intelligence agencies in the show. In the book, most of his troubles came from turf wars between British and Americans who had enjoyed ever-increasing power during the Cold War, but now faced the terrifying prospect of irrelevance now that it was over. As you can see, Coleman was pregnant at the time of filming, which was written into the story, but didn't play a huge part in it. Possibly coincidentally, or possibly because of this, motherhood seems to be a recurring theme that's been added to the show. Both Jed and the British girl who falls for Pine were childless in the book, but now have sons added to their backstories. Said British girl is a conglomeration of two women who develop a thing for Pine in the book. The woman he takes advantage of to forge a passport was a European girl from later in the story. So, here's what happens in the book as the climax starts ramping up. When Apostol's role as an informant is betrayed to Roper, the unlucky lawyer is tortured before being murdered, forcing him to give up Pine's identity as an undercover agent. Roper has Pine and the massive amounts of cocaine he just traded his weapons for loaded up onto his cruise ship and starts sailing home. Even though Pine managed to smuggle to them all the information they would need to arrest Roper, MI6 and the CIA decide they would rather have him in business, so make up a bunch of excuses as to why they can't touch him regarding jurisdiction and international waters. Pine is beaten to within an inch of his life for information, as Roper suspects his own girlfriend of being a co-conspirator. Aided by the ghostly memory of Sophie, Pine refuses to admit Jed's part in his espionage no matter what they do to him. Even as his whole operation is being shut down around him, Burr manages to collect enough information to forge proof that his corrupt superiors are in bed with Roper, but instead of using it in the probably doomed quest to try to arrest him, he sacrifices it to bluff and bargain for Pine and Jed's release. Roper and his cronies fall for it and are forced to let them both go. go. Pine makes a last-ditch attempt to power through his debilitating agony and attack Roper, but the dude just pulls a gun on Jed, so he's forced to withdraw peacefully. Roper sails away to continue his international life of crime, and Pine and Jed retire to the same little village where he once pretended to murder a guy to live quietly ever after. I did mention I found the ending deeply unfulfilling. Very little ultimately came of the whole plot. At best, you could say it ended in a stalemate for both sides. As I said, the show took a different approach. Corky's suspicions, which didn't really come to much of anything in the book, lead him to catch Pine red-handed sneaking back into the mercenary compound and try to beat him to death. In defending himself and killing Corcoran, Pine successfully frames him as the traitor with Jed's help. However, things still go tits up fast because it turns out the info he just fed to Burr was a red herring that Roper set up to bamboozle whoever the traitor was. Humiliated by this failure, MI6 shuts down enforcement, and Pine and Jed have no choice but to keep pretending to be loyal Roper stans and travel to Egypt to complete the arms deal. In an ironic twist, they end up right back at the same hotel the story started in. Burr attempts to continue the case as best she can with only herself, her loyal assistant, and a CIA friend of hers who she may or may not have hooked up with at some point in the past. She offers Pine an out, explaining that they're running solo now, but he wants to see it through to the end. Pine comes across Freddy again, who fortunately doesn't recognize him, and he takes the opportunity to avenge Sophie by choking him out and drowning him in his own pool. Jed tells Pine what Roper's safe number is, who passes it to Burr, who uses it to steal more of Roper's documents and passes them back to Pine, who uses them to sneak into Roper's warehouses and secretly plant explosives in his weapons stockpiles. He also uses his position as the head of Roper's fake middle company to transfer away the money he was paid for them. Jed gets discovered and tortured by Roper and his goons, but refuses to give up Pine. Roper figures out his involvement anyway, but needs him alive to complete the deal. During the handover, Pine sets off the bombs, blowing up the weapons. Roper's underlings discover they can't offer a refund because Pine has moved the money. His would-be customers are somewhat pissed about this, but Roper tells them to bugger off and throws in some pretty racist insults as well. Pine offers to trade the money for Jed's release, but unbeknownst to him, Burr has already rescued her and has Roper arrested. He's confident his wealth and connections make him untouchable, but Burr has taken the precaution of having his corrupt bureaucrats blackmailed into withdrawing their protection, and the crime bosses he just fobbed off and insulted turn up to take custody of him, presumably to drag him away to a horrible death. An unplanned, but as far as Burr is concerned, acceptable fate for him. Pine arranges for Jed to be sent home and reunited with her strange son. The end. So yeah, a bit more of a definitive conclusion in my humble opinion. In addition to Motherhood, revenge is another new, heavily pushed feature of the show. Book Pine settles his debt to Sophie by paying it forward and refusing to out Jed under torture in exactly the same way Sophie once did for him, as opposed to show Pine avenging her death by murdering her killer. Burr is also given a more personal reason for hating Roper. Apparently, they both once witnessed the same gas attack on a playing field full of children. She was traumatized by it for life, but he saw it as a good reason to get in on this gas selling business, making him the focal point for all her anger. There's mention in the book that Pine was deployed to Northern Ireland when he served in the UK military. I don't know how much the world knows about that particular conflict, but it was pretty fucking horrible, and he had more than a little PTSD from the things he was forced to do to civilians there. The day manager at the hotel Pine worked at in Switzerland was a dignified bald man who eventually decided to allow himself a little vanity in the form of a fancy wig. A long-time wealthy patron of the hotel decided that she hated it and told him she would stop coming there if he didn't take it off. He refused. Later in the book, Pine takes inspiration from this memory, deciding that if a Swiss hotel manager could stand by his toupee, he could stand by his refusal to break under torture at the hands of an international arms dealer. So, yeah. There's that. Final thoughts. I think that it is equally valid to like the victorious ending of the show or the melancholy ending of the book. I personally favour the satisfaction of Roper getting his comeuppance, but you could very easily make the argument that this reduces the emotional depth of book Burr and Pine having to accept that things don't always work out the way they hope they will, and the underlying theme that something like undercover spy work often is a lot of pain and suffering for potentially little to no reward. Ironically, it does appear that the show, the version of the story with a more final finale, might be getting a season 2, while the book remains forever sequelless. Despite the differences to the ending, I think a fan of the book would enjoy the show, and a fan of the show would enjoy the book, again assuming they have at least some interest in espionage thrillers to begin with. I would recommend both to newcomers, but with a slight partiality towards the TV show if you felt you had to choose just one. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Don't forget that all YouTubers exist in the perpetual threat of irrelevance in the eyes of the almighty algorithm, and the best way to help them avoid such a fate is to subscribe if you're new, smash that like button, leave an engagement-fueling comment, and help spread the word about their channels on social media. I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon. Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honour, Shelby Holtz and Matthew J. Brish. Hello again, my beautiful watchers. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick reminder that there's a wonderful website called Patreon that's been allowing online producers to actually make a living doing what they do, since apparently YouTube's decided that they shouldn't anymore. Basically, they offer the chance to pledge a certain amount of money per month or per video in exchange for various rewards offered by the creator. There's a variety of stuff you can earn by becoming one of my patrons, including early access to all videos and taking part in that survey you see at the start of every Lost in Adaptation episode. That's actually a very important part of the process, as I use it to gauge how much I'm going to need to explain about the book and the film before I start comparing them. If you decide to become a higher level contributor, your name will be added to the credits that you're seeing right now, and you'll be given the option to join my private chat room so you can regularly talk with me and other patrons. If you're keen enough to join the topmost tier of patronage, you'll earn the most coveted of all the rewards, the chance to pick a future adaptation to be reviewed by yours truly. However, if right now you are thinking, "My goodness, the Dom, I can't do that. I mean, I was going to. I found a magic lamp that granted me 3 wishes, and I meant to wish for infinite wealth, but, well, long story short, I have 3 jetpacks now." Fear not, it would still be a huge help to me if you were to give that like button the old clickaroo, share this episode on social media with perhaps a little recommendation to your friends to check it out, and subscribe if you've not already. It really helps my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you in the next episode. Adaptation of books to... Ah! Jesus! Oh, so Terry, you scared the shit out of me. Come here. Yeah. Last minute cat cameo. The best way to help them avoid such a fate is to subscribe as you're new. The best way to help them avoid such a fate is to subscribe as you're... If you... Okay. Last paragraph is going to be a bit of a pain. Typical. The best way to help them avoid such a fate is to subscribe... That's all, folks.